All right, so we got a lot of social issues that we deal with nowadays. Not that they didn't deal with them before, but a lot of people tell me stuff like, Sean, you need to just focus on one issue. The problem is, all of these issues tie in together. They're all part of a greater whole. They all have a greater reason. See, there's a reason that we have local news stations, national news stations that want to separate us by group. Now, one thing I noticed after listening to some of the migration groups, immigration groups, some of the hate groups like the KKK, and some of the minority groups like Black Lives Matters, which I don't consider a minority group, by the way. Just because they tend to focus on black people doesn't mean that the rights they're not fighting for aren't all of ours. Now, I see on the news how we try to paint it as one minority group's fault or another minority group's fault, but really that minority group that we're looking at is the poor, and the poor are not a minority group. We account for most of the people in the United States. We're expected to give far more than we receive for the greater good of who? Now, when I hear the Black Lives Matter folks complaining, I hear about them complaining about specifically rights of black people, whether it's a black issue or not. We'll make it that way. The KKK does the same thing. So do a lot of these immigrant groups. The fact is, the rights that they're all fighting for, they're all the same rights. They're all the same rights. We got to keep the black people and the white people at each other's throats, don't we? We got to keep the poor hating on the other poor. And all of them hate on the homeless. It don't matter what minority group you're a part of. Chances are pretty good that you've taken part in a lot of the hatred that's spread towards the homeless community. People blame who they can get away with blaming, who it's socially acceptable to blame. I know a lot more racist people that are not part of the KKK than I do people who are part of the KKK. You don't have to be racist. You don't have to be in the KKK to be racist. You don't have to be white to be racist. Anybody can be racist. That guy who was racist at the Super 8, he was racist towards Brian and Clyde Townsend. The racist guy just happened to be Asian. Brian and Clyde just both happen to be black. But they're still human beings and they're still fighting for human rights. I've heard a lot of people from the KKK and Aryan Nation, and they talk about the rights that they want, the rights they feel were robbed from them by black people. And I get to hear about these rights that black people think are robbed from them by white people. When it all comes down to it, none of us have those rights because we don't stick together. If we can't get the KKK shaking hands with the Crips and the Bloods, what the hell are we doing? All of these groups claim to be protecting their own communities. How are you collectively protecting your own communities? What are you doing to make your community safer? What are you doing to provide and ensure unity? I'm not saying that you should go to a KKK rally, not by any means. And I'm not saying that you have to go march with Black Lives Matter. It should be our lives that matter, our rights, not just the rights of the rich. And we look at the measurement by which we tell ourselves our country is greater than others. The amount of money that we spend. Of course, what do we spend it on? The military, prisons, places to put the poor because we don't want the poor to have actual housing, which has been shown in over 30 other nations that You provide housing first, those people generally become productive members of society. Whereas if you make it illegal for them to not have a roof, they'll never have the money to get a roof. The only people who benefit from that are the state. And in our particular society, capitalist society, the people with the money to invest. We judge whether or not our nation is doing good as a country based on the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones Industrial stocks. The problem is now we've got these rich people who took our labor, converted it into stocks, and then sold those stocks overseas. Our government is now basically dealing with trade terrorists, corporations who take what we've earned and use it to push us out so that us, the workers, are no longer valid. And then they hold our country hostage with those resources, saying, hey, you do as I want, or I'm going to take my money overseas, or I'll take it just south of the border or just north of the border. We got a lot of that going on. We also have people who are losing $120,000 jobs a year. And, we lose 4,000 of those. We replace them with 6,000 minimum wage jobs and talk about how we're making a better economy. Of course, we're also trying to phase out human beings at our fast food restaurants and at our grocery stores. We've already done this to the call centers. You guys know how difficult it is to get a call through and actually talk to a human being. The hospital that I was at a few days ago, they sent me a call, and it was some lady claiming to be a charge nurse. It was a recording. It wasn't even a real human being that called me back. It was a recording. That's just shameful. And these companies are cutting corners and cutting corners. You're spending $1,800 a month on your insulin. The VA in Denver sucks, so you got to go to the VA in Wyoming. And the rights that you thought you were fighting for, now you realize you really don't. That's not what you fought for. This is the United States we live in today. Divided, we fell. There used to be a time when the poor worked for the poor. That was not in my lifetime. In my lifetime, I've seen the homeless do things for the homeless that nobody else would do. I've seen them sacrifice for other homeless people when people in houses could easily give that up and go back to their house and just forget about it, be completely fine with it. Blankets are one of those things. Boulder County Cares, they pass out blankets until 10 o'clock at night. At 10:30, those blankets become illegal. So we fund Boulder County Cares to hand out blankets so that we can fund the police to charge homeless people 60 hours of manual labor and over $400 in fines for one night getting busted using that blanket. And like I said, Boulder County Cares only cares until 10. After that, no more blankets. If you show up late, you freeze to death. That's just how it is. It was up to people like me to pass out blankets, but not just people like me. People in houses who donated those blankets in many cases. We need to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but the right thing to do isn't to fight for individual rights. It's to fight for our rights back. The rights that have been stolen from us since 2001. 9/11 didn't do anything to stop terrorism. It did more to breed terrorism here in the United States. People are fed up. I've been trying to find a peaceful solution to this for years. Unfortunately, people don't listen to reason. They like violence. It's like the Romans with the Colosseum. You want to see bloodshed. You watch those shows about murder, those shows about clowns chopping people up into little pieces. You watch the news and it's mostly negativity. And once in a while, you get a little show about a little girl who drew a picture for some homeless people. Well done. Fact is, it's not just the Bollingers and the police that I'm ashamed of, it's the American people. Because they watched this happen, because it wasn't happening to them. Telling people like me we need to shut up, and now that it's happening to them, they complaining too. Somebody needs to stand up and do something about it. Why can't it be you? If we can have a 1 million man march for black folks and a 1 million woman march for women, we can have a 10 million person march pretty easily just for human rights. Do you really care about the Constitution? What part of the Constitution do you care about? The 13th Amendment to the Constitution needs to be abolished. This is the amendment that makes it legal for slavery for anybody convicted of a crime. It's not even specific about the crime. You can be convicted of a misdemeanor. If you don't have the money for a lawyer, you will be convicted of a misdemeanor. Or the judge will get tired of seeing your name on the roster. By that point, you've already lost everything. So does it really matter? Because now you're homeless, and everything you do, from going to the bathroom to sleeping to using a blanket to finding shelter, it's all now illegal. Congratulations, America. This divided crap killed us all. Every one of us. We're just a shell of what we used to be or what we could have been. We could make the world a better place. Now we're going to have to wait on China. Why do we have to wait on China? Because it's their move. It's sad that we allowed it to get to this point. We've allowed it to get to the point where we had trade sanctions on China my entire life, yet half of everything still says made in China. Most of our foreign allies now take more money from China than they get from us. Meanwhile, we're too busy fleecing our own people to really care about our rights. Why are we still telling other people in foreign countries how to live when we're busy victimizing the victims in the United States? Telling victims of rape that they just have to get over it. It's pretty disgusting.